How's it going, everyone? There was a really great professional wrestling match on Saturday night, the main event of AEW Collision. I wanted to take a deep dive into it. It was Kris Statlander defending the TBS Championship against Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, at the Bryce Jordan Center on the campus of Penn State, Britt Baker's alma mater. So, heading into the match, it was clear who the fan favorite in the building was, but it wasn't really clear who was going to win this match. On one hand, it's taking place in Baker's former campus. She's always been beloved by her hometown. She always reps the local sports teams. She reps her school sports teams. So it felt like perhaps AEW was building us up for a feel-good story of the hometown wrestler winning a title in front of her friends, family, classmates, and fans. On the other hand, it didn't really feel like it was time for Kris Statlander to lose the title. She just beat Jade Cargill for it a few months ago. Then she had just defeated Jade Cargill again to main event Rampage, which aired the night before Collision. So the idea of Statlander dropping the title so soon kind of seemed like an odd choice. And that's really where wrestling is at its best. When you have a big match, maybe there's a title on the line, or there's some sort of consequences for the loser and reward for the winner, but it's not clear who is going to win. And so while this match was a babyface versus another babyface, there were plenty of Britt Baker fans in the building and watching at home that night, hoping she would win the title. And on the other hand, Kris Statlander has an ever-growing fan base as well, and they probably didn't want her to drop the title so soon. For those fans, this is the best kind of wrestling match. One where you care about the results and you are also not sure what the results will be. If a match has those two things, the match doesn't even have to be all that good for it to be really good. Now let's dive into the match itself. So they spent a few moments in the early going just kind of staring at each other and allowing the crowd to chant DMD for Britt Baker. Then they established very early that Statlander is the stronger of the two wrestlers. They would tie up. Statlander knocked Baker over with a couple of shoulder tackles. Then she gives her a body slam and Baker escapes to the outside. So right there, it's established, okay, Statlander, she's the bigger wrestler. She's the stronger wrestler. So that's what she is working to her advantage. So Baker escapes to the outside. Now, Baker is dressed all in blue and white, the Penn State colors, and she stops and kind of stands next to a fan in the front row who has a sign that says "We Are," which is the Penn State motto. So the match is not even like a minute old at this point. Well, it's maybe about a minute old. And they have established, okay, Statlander is the stronger of the two wrestlers, but Britt Baker's got the fans behind her. So then they get back into the ring and they do sort of that fighting spirit type of exchange where Statlander hits Baker with a shot and then Baker comes back and hits Statlander with a shot, and neither one's trying to avoid the other. They're just trying to hit the other one as hard as they can. Jim Ross hates it when wrestlers do that. Then after this, Baker throws Statlander into the turnbuckle, but Statlander did an up and over to avoid Baker charging at her into the corner. Then right after this, Baker starts favoring her knee. Like when she lands on the mat, she starts shaking out her knee. And of course, Statlander has a long history of knee injuries. So now it's been established, okay, Statlander's knee is bothering her. This could end up playing a role in the match. And up until this point, it's been like 90% Statlander. Baker's hit a couple of forearms, but that's it. Otherwise, Statlander has gotten the advantage in every exchange, except for now, we know that she has a hurt knee. Baker tries to take advantage of this. She lands a neck breaker. She then tried to hit a sling blade clothesline, but Statlander countered and hit a power slam for a near fall. So now, even though Statlander's knee looks to be a factor, she's still got the upper hand on the hometown favorite. Later, Statlander hoisted Baker up for a delayed suplex that seemed to go on forever. And Jim Ross and Nigel McGuinness compared her to the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith. And it was at about this time that I realized I like Nigel McGuinness on commentary. He's good at it. So the crowd is then trying to get Baker back into this. Statlander hits a backbreaker, and once again, Statlander is on the offensive. So at this point, we're about a third of the way through this match, and Statlander has taken about 90% of the offense. Baker has basically only hit a neck breaker and a couple of forearms. However, Statlander goes up for a moonsault, an ill-advised moonsault. She misses, and that provides Baker with an opening that she hasn't had before. Baker, with this opening, decides, hey, I'm going to target Statlander's knee that I know is hurt. So she goes to the outside, she grabs Statlander's legs, and she starts ramming them into the steel post. And Jim Ross starts talking about how Bret Hart utilized a similar move during his career. And it was at about this time that I realized I also like Jim Ross on commentary. I mean, I realized that probably 30 years ago, but it came up again here. So Baker hits a couple of sling blade clotheslines, but Statlander then gets back into it with the Blue Thunder Bomb. She hits another driver onto Baker for a near fall as well. However, shortly after this, Baker counters an attack from Statlander and lands a curb stomp. And so right away, it's like, despite all the damage that Statlander had done to Baker throughout the match, Baker has evened it up by hitting one of her most important moves. So again, if you were like a diehard Britt Baker fan and you want her to win the title here, this is a very exciting moment for you. Will the ref's hand hit 3? Will I get to see a big fun moment where a wrestler I like wins a championship? And then Statlander kicks out and you're disappointed, but hopefully you are having fun along the journey. After this, however, Baker looks to put Statlander in the lockjaw. And Jim Ross made a comment here that I believe deserves some attention. As Baker is trying to put the lockjaw in, Ross says, "Where's Sam Shepard when you need him?" And if you didn't know why he said that, here is why. Sorry. So Sam Shepard was a doctor who was famous for not having killed his wife. Somebody else did kill his wife in 1955. However, a jury convicted Shepard in the death of his wife and sent him to prison. Okay, so through the appeals process, Shepard is later acquitted and released. So after he gets out of jail, a professional wrestler by the name of George Strickland decided to train him for wrestling. And at the age of 45, Killer Sam Shepard began wrestling. He would use a move called the mandibular nerve pinch as his finishing move. The idea was that because he was a doctor, he knew all the nerves in the mouth, and so he could pinch this nerve, and it would cause excruciating pain. So a wrestler that you may have heard of, a little bit more famous than Sam Shepard, Mick Foley as Mankind, he would use the mandible claw beginning in 1996. The murder. So Sam Shepard's story is pretty famous. It would go on to inspire the TV show and later the film The Fugitive, starring Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones. That was kind of a big deal at the time, that movie. And it makes sense that Britt Baker would use the move with her dental background. She would know about all these nerves in the mouth, just like Dr. Sam Shepard did. So that is why Jim Ross said what he said. Statlander manages to get out of the lockjaw, and then they end up exchanging strikes for a bit. They were doing the boo yeah thing where they're booing Statlander landing strikes, but they're cheering Baker. Baker hits a couple of super kicks. Statlander hit a big clothesline, and now both wrestlers are down for a period. When they get up, Statlander misses a knee in the corner and yells out as if she's hurt her already injured knee again. So Statlander's injured knee comes into it again a little while later. She is going to pick Baker up. It looks like she's got her for a power bomb or a similar type move. I'm not certain on this, but I think what they were trying to show was that Baker's injured knee sort of gave out or wouldn't allow her to perform the move. But I'm not sure if that's what they were trying to show here, but that would make sense considering the story that is played out through the match. So after this, Baker goes on the offense. She hits a Canadian Destroyer, an Angel Wings, and then another curb stomp for a near fall that I think everyone watching in the building definitely thought it would be the finish, and probably many people at home too. So that's a That's an emotional roller coaster, a near fall that you believe in a type of match like this that has real consequences to it, and you don't know who's going to win. So after this, Baker went for a Panama Sunrise, but Statlander grabbed her off the turnbuckle and had her up on her shoulders when Baker countered into the lockjaw. So now we have another near finish here. So the lockjaw is in, and everyone in the building must now assume that this is the finish. They thought moments ago was the finish, and they were surprised when Statlander had kicked out, but now it's like, okay, well, we're getting the finish here. Baker is about to be champion. We're all going to have a lovely time. And then in a span of just seconds, not only is Statlander not tapped out to the lockjaw, she's countered it into a pinning combination and got the 3 count. And the whole time, Baker's hand is still in Statlander's mouth throughout the pin. So this finish reminded me a little bit of the famous Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper WrestleMania match, where Piper had Hart in the sleeper hold, his finishing move, and it looks to everyone like Piper is about to win and retain the Intercontinental Championship, but then Hart counters it into a pinning combination and he got the win. So in a flash, you think one person is about to win the match, and then out of nowhere, the other wrestler has won. And that's such a great thing for a match like this, where whether you're a Baker fan or you're a Statlander fan, you care about who's going to win because there's a title on the line and you don't know who's going to win. You don't know what the result's going to be. So it's a big emotional roller coaster. And so Baker and Statlander shook hands after the match. Statlander raised Baker's arm, but Baker got out of there pretty quickly and the show went off the air not too much longer after that. So we don't really know what Britt's reaction to this loss is going to be. And there is the question of where does Britt Baker go from here? Because she was in the title match at All In, and she didn't win that. Then she was in a #1 contenders match on, I want to say Dynamite or Rampage or on a show, and she didn't win that either. And then she comes into her, not her hometown, but her home school, her home campus where she went to school. Such a pivotal time in anyone's life. And she loses in front of her friends and family too. So some type of arc needs to happen here with Baker. These losses are going to impact her in some way, and it's going to affect how she does things in the future, where she goes from here. So we'll just have to wait and see. But like, Baker is pretty much out of the title picture for either the TBS belt or the world title at this point. So where does Britt Baker go from here? I think that's an interesting question that I'm quite certain we will get a satisfying answer to as the weeks go on. And then the other question is, where does Kris Statlander go from here? Well, it seems like she's trying to emulate Orange Cassidy's title reign and be a fighting champion. So she's going to put that title on the line against all comers. And we did see Julia Hart was looking on, watching this match very closely. So I think that signifies that Julia Hart is probably the next in line for a shot at Kris Statlander's championship. Okay, so finally, we are going to debut our special match rating system here. And I am awarding this match 2 alien heads, 2 back molars, and 1 elf's foot. So needless to say, I was impressed. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you don't miss out on any more match reviews or any other videos that we put out. Thank you once again.